I don't know when, and I don't know where or how, but this series, The Patient, is going to give me a heart attack. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. There's been a groundswell of everybody. Everybody's following this Patient series, and everybody's leaving comments and coming up with the theories, and I dig it. So anybody who's joined the channel from watching from the Patient, kudos, thank you, welcome. There's popcorn in the back. No, there's no popcorn. But thank you for joining. I really do appreciate it. The latest episode of The Patient is called Kaddish. We will learn what that is on the back end. We open the episode with Sam coming home in the morning after killing Elias in front of in front of Alan. Comes home with tools needed to sort of bury him in the basement. To bury him, he has like a brick a machine to break the bricks or break the concrete, and he's got a shovel. He's planning to bury. It looks like he's trying to bury him in that basement. But before he moves with all the tools in, his mom comes around the corner and basically is like, "Hey, yo, I'm disappointed in you, and it took everything in my power to not call the police. I wanted to call the police on you, but I didn't do it. But you need to stick with therapy." That's really the only thing that she has for him. It's not like you're admonished or you should be shamed or this or this. It's like, no, you need to stick with therapy. That's your way out of this. You need to stick with therapy. Fascinating way to bleed into this. And then we have about a good 10 minutes of silence between Alan and Sam. Sam goes into the room where Elias was originally being held and starts to break ground to try and uh, create a spot to bury him. It's interesting. He has to plug the plug in on the outside. We sort of get a shot of the noisemaker or the noise canceling machine that he put there to plug there first. But that is his goal, and as he is doing that, we start seeing Alan go into a sort of a disassociative break. He starts to imagine himself in a therapy session with what we come to find out is his former therapist, played by David Allen Greer, who's actually, we learn, is dead. So this is a therapist of his or a friend of his that that did therapy, but he's no longer with us, which is, there's a thread that I want to pull on, and I'll bring it up at the end. They start going back and forth, and his therapist, and this is, mind you, this is basically Alan having a self conversation with himself. He's self diagnosing himself, therapying himself. But in that, he comes to have a conversation with, "Hey, why aren't you doing more? Like, why aren't you trying to get out of this?" He's like, "I've tried everything I can." He's like, "Yeah, but you're of able body. You should be able to get out of this." So it's just sort of more of a way of us seeing what's happening in Alan's brain without us having to actually talk out loud to anybody. This is a way to sort of break into that and see what's happening in there. And in that, he comes to the realization that yes, he is disassociating. He is finding that sort of happy place that he can kind of think while madness is happening in the real world. He feels he's tried everything he could. He's like, psychopathy is not his expertise. He doesn't have anything. He's been in therapy for like 2 years as a therapist. This isn't sort of his expertise. He's tried life stories. He's tried recontextualizing things for him and how, hey, what you do hurt your mom. He's tried diverting, like go see your ex. He's tried them all the things, all the tools that he knows he has. He's tried them, and they've all failed. And now he's kind of like, I've run out of options. I don't know what to do, and this man's going to kill me. He's also realizing that he's running out of arrhythmia pills. He's also running out of foot cream, which doesn't mean as much, but the arrhythmia pills are a part of it. We do see some flashes that are interesting in this disassociation. We start seeing moments with Ezra in the basement turning around with a blue light, and it seems like there's a trap being done. So I'm trying to get torn a little bit because I don't know why. There's a bigger story to whatever Ezra or wherever Ezra is or whatever has happened to Ezra and his wife and how his wife is killed, because there seems to be whatever break he's having. This isn't the first time he's had it, and he felt comfortable having this break and having this conversation with his dead therapist. Like he's been here before, and there has to have been something that occurred before that was tragic enough that made this happen. I don't know if Ezra is responsible for his mom's death. She was sick with cancer, so that I feel like that leads to that naturally. But there's a linchpin somewhere that we're missing that we don't have the puzzle piece to. There's Alan has a gateway into this that I think us as an audience have not seen yet. And so we keep playing with this. We keep seeing all these flashbacks for a reason. They're not continuing to show us this other than like, hey, like to give a little bit more contextualization to who Alan is. But there's a reason we keep going to this. There's a reason that we keep bringing up Ezra. But there's a piece that I'm missing that I can't quite figure out. Part of me, as I sit here and think about it, I do wonder if if Ezra did have something to do with the death of his own mother, and there was some type of situation that they had. Could all of this be a psychotic break that Alan himself is having, and that disassociation that he had with his own therapist is sort of his way of coping with that? But it's I think that's going too far into it. I'm thinking too much into it, but there's something there that I'm not quite getting. But there's a throwaway line that his therapist gives him that maybe you should get his mother or him to realize that his mother is responsible for what he is. Because while he is not calling the police, he's also the moment that the impetus of what we see here as to how you got here and how you feel and how Sam feels he needed to protect her all sort of starts there. And Alan's kind of like, all right, cool, I'll keep all of that. But he's having thoughts of like, I need to smash this into his face. He wants to get aggressive because he missed his window when Elias brought it up earlier. But he's not thinking about now. He's now playing this back in his head, and it's he's starting to second guess himself and kind of feel helpless. He's broken out of his disassociation with his therapist when Sam comes to get him and have him help out with the digging of the hole. There's a point in time when Sam, I guess, gets calluses on his hand. It's a little too rough of a work for him. And he brings in Sam. He unties Alan's chain from the bed, brings it, has him step a little further away so he can't get enough space without him being able to react. And then he ties it to a pole in the other room where Elias was and has Alan start digging the rest of the hole. And he gives him some tips. He's like, hey, you're coming at it, come at it from a sharper angle, get more in there. And then he leaves him. He pulls off and he lets Alan kind of finish off the work there. We get a couple more flashbacks. We get to see him with his therapist post the wife's death. We see all of that. It's a lot of flashbacking to where Alan is getting therapy to kind of figure out the next steps to give therapy to Sam. Because he's sort of at his wit's end. And he comes up with a plan with an ulterior motive. His plan is to try and humanize Elias, even in death. So Sam returns with donuts, because that's what you got to give somebody after you've murdered someone. Very, very childlike. And he chains Alan back up to the bed and then sits down to have a therapy session. Sam starts to get up to leave to do something, and Alan's like, no, Sam, we need to talk. We need to get into this. And it's at that point that Alan has sort of moved on to the next tactic that he plans to use to get out of this. And Alan asks and tells Sam, hey, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to think of Elias as a human being. If someone were to kill you, how would your mother feel? And he's like, wait, huh? And he goes further into it. Alan's like, all right, look, you're going to bury his body. I need you to do me a favor. don't bury his body. Put his body out in plain sight. And Alan and Sam's like, I don't know, because they'll know that I did it. They'll have things to trace back to me. They'll get this. And Alan kind of was like, hey, you've been good at this for all the other people that you've killed before. There's no fingerprints. There's nothing on file. So if they got your fingerprints from anything from this body, you're not gonna pop up in the system, right? And Sam's like, no, I wouldn't. It's like, cool. He's like, what about the carpet fibers? He's like, this is a 20-year-old carpet that no one really makes anymore. How are they gonna find this carpet? They're not gonna attach it to you. And Alan is sort of feeding him things that Sam thinks about, and it's like, yeah, no, they wouldn't. So Alan then says, okay, cool. You haven't been caught this far. They're not going to catch you now if you put this body out there. He's like, and the reason why I'm saying this is because I think the body needs to be present to give the family some type of a closure. And he goes into this whole thing about how what the Jewish tradition is with having a week of mourning, and then a prayer that is said daily for a year, and then that prayer, the Kaddish, which is the title, is said yearly on the same day from that point on. And Sam kind of misses what he's getting at. And he's like, hey, you want me to say the prayer? And the way the line reading that Steve Carell gives at this moment is fantastic. It's like, no, I don't think that's we'll come back to that. It's pitch perfect. It's so naive of Sam to think that that's all he has to do to sort of fix this. But what Alan's getting at is saying, hey, let's not bury this body. You need to go ahead and take this out. And he's like, okay, I will. This is when Alan's light bulb goes off. Sam goes and does his normal peeing routine. Puts the cup in the wastebasket, drops it off, and then he closes the door and he goes to pee. Now, if we stated before in many episodes, when he goes to pee, he takes an extensive amount of time. And Alan kind of knows this. He knows this is his routine. He knows that that's what he does. And so when he goes, the second he closes that door and he goes to pee, Alan goes into thinking mode. He goes into survival mode, and he writes a note on the pad. Basically, he puts the full name of Sam, and describes the house. He doesn't put an address because he doesn't know it, but he describes the home. And then he balls it up, and he puts that inside of Elias's mouth, dead mouth, and just pushes it in there as much as he possibly can. Obviously, he can't force it all the way back because the mouth is not open. He's dead, so he can't get into the airways or passageways. But he puts it back there enough. So that it is not completely visible, or it won't just pop out upon just moving. He then notices that he has ink on his hand, because he gets away with it. He sits down and he's like, perfect, I'm cool. Here's the toilet flushing, and then he sees that he has the ink on his hand. So he's freaking out about this is where I start, my heart starts racing. He starts trying to get the ink off and trying to figure out how to do it, because think about it, even if the ink stays on his hand in this moment, there's no way for him to wash it off. It's not like he's got wash stuff near him. So even if Sam doesn't see it right now, if he finds the note, or if he somehow finds it, he's usually going to be like, this is you did this. So then you just see the last 2 minutes of me and Alan both just freaking out watching Sam move this body, because he wraps it up in a tarp. He puts it so that Elias's face is face down and his mouth off to the right. And then you just see him dragging, after he puts him in the rug, dragging Elias out. And he's dragging him up, dragging him out. You can just, and they keep a camera on his face to just see if his mouth opens up and has that paper fall out. It's gut wrenching, because this is basically Alan's last hurrah to get out of that situation. He puts it in there, and then the doors close, and then we don't really see him put him into the truck and do all that stuff. And then we get a final scene of Alan just sitting there on the bed and watching his deceased wife sing at one of the religious ceremonies that they have. Jesus. Now, outside of the disassociative point of this, and whatever these Ezra flashbacks that keep popping up actually mean, which it's hard for me to contextualize without I need the full story of what Ezra and what the final thing was that Ezra and his mom had. So without that, I can't really put too much thought into that. But without the disassociative part and him speaking to his dead therapist, this is a pretty straightforward episode. In that it's Sam coming home to bury Elias, Alan trying to come up, thinking as fast as he possibly can to come up with a next tactic to do, and this is the best thing that he could come up with. Which is great because at the end of the last episode, Elias asked him to, hey, once I get free, once we do that, let's attack him together. He didn't do that, so now this is the next best thing. And it, hopefully, in addition to giving him a way to sort of maybe get someone to pay attention and get out of this, it does give Elias the closure, his family at least the closure that I think Alan did promise him. I don't think Alan is safe yet. And I don't think that note's going to make it to where it gets to, where it's supposed to. I could be wrong, but I think with all the moving in the truck, I think once he gets to the location, that piece is going to get dislodged from where it is. Sam's going to see it, and he's going to be furious, and he's going to come back, and he's going to try to end Alan immediately. I think he's going to feel betrayed. I think Alan came up with this last ditch effort without thinking fully. And hey, at this point, you're going to die either way. I think we're at the point now where no matter what happens, he's going to die. There's a moment that I didn't really bring up is that Sam blames Alan for the failure to save Elias. He puts this on him. He's like, hey, this is your fault. Which is a very sociopathic thing to say. I think one of the viewers here, you brought it up, is that like he's a sociopath. So no matter what therapy or what Alan says, it's not going to work because he's already sort of made up his mind, and you can see sort of the naive behavior he gives in the response to Alan about the Kaddish, the prayer. He's like, oh, can I say that prayer? Can I do that? Let's do that. Everything is so simple for him, but he's also got so much anger and hate. And anything that does not go his way, he immediately flips at the drop of a dime. This is the first episode that I don't really have that many clues outside of the disassociation piece to kind of figure out what exactly is going on. And had we not seen a sequence where Sam was diverted to go see his ex, and then he brought something back from that home, and we saw a whole other home, my theory or the concept of this all being in Alan's head would stand a little bit more, but there's been too much world built outside of just this home to make that stick. So now I'm like, well, something happened that this disassociation that Alan is having has occurred before, and now I need to figure out when or why that happened to kind of understand who Alan is more. Because I think that's going to be the piece to kind of put all of this together. All in all, a really good episode. I think last week was sort of the high. It's like that's the mid-season, and now we're coming back down on that train. And I think we'll get another uptick before, but the last 5 minutes of this are intense. And I think that what we're going to get, I don't think this is going to work, and I think what we're going to get at the top of the next episode is Sam coming in hot and Alan having to figure out what to do next. Well, I've been saying that the whole time that this note's not going to make it, there's a chance that it does. And if it does, the question then becomes, is Ezra checking in on his father enough to put two and two together? Like, that's the biggest piece of this all. If Ezra's not around and doesn't care enough to go see about his father or what he's doing or that he's missing, he could be gone for an extended amount of time without anybody else realizing it. Which sort of makes this weigh a little bit more. He could be fighting for somebody, trying to get some attention from somebody that's actually not even paying attention, which is frightening. What did you guys think about this episode of The Patient Called Kaddish? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.